Hi, I'm Mark David Gerson. Welcome to Stories and Reflections, where my stories are also yours. It's August 1996. I've been back in Toronto for 9 months, having returned from my year and a half in Nova Scotia last December. I talk about my time in Nova Scotia in a few of these podcasts, notably in Stories and Reflections 15 and Stories and Reflections 28. Anyhow, it's August 1996, and that intuitive self, wisest self, higher mind, infinite mind that has been guiding me, pretty amazingly, for the past 3 or 4 years, alerts me that it's time to move on from my current roommate situation and from Toronto. To be precise, it's time to move north, up to the Ontario equivalent of the rural, small-town life I had in Nova Scotia. Of course, I make assumptions. That's what the human brain does. It takes whatever is input into it and presumes, assumes, and extrapolates. Now, some of these presumptions, assumptions, and extrapolations will prove to be true. Many, many will prove to be false. Why is that? Because in one sense, the conscious mind is like AI. It can only process new information based on existing information and past experience. On its own, it can't, to borrow from Star Trek, go where no one has gone before. It can suggest somewhat novel takes on where we've gone before, but it can't take us to those unimagined Star Trek-like worlds. That's the realm of the unconscious mind, the higher mind, the infinite mind, the intuitive mind. So again, I make assumptions. The biggest, most egregious is that I'm to repeat the first part of my Nova Scotia experience. In other words, to trade the distractions and urban buzz of Canada's largest city for a backcountry, largely solitary existence to work on the Moon Quest. In this case, a fourth draft. After all, it was in rural Nova Scotia that I wrote most of the book's first 2 drafts, my first book's first 2 drafts. The only difference this time around is that I'll have canine company, my Cocker Spaniel, Roxy. So it's that assumption that governs my housing search, and nearly leads to its failure. My house hunting takes me to Penetanguishene, its name generally abbreviated to a more manageable Penetang. The small community about 100 miles north of Toronto sits at the southeastern tip of Georgian Bay, a massive Lake Huron inlet that's nearly as large as all of Lake Ontario. On one of my exploratory visits to the area, I explained to a local realtor that I'm looking for a secluded cottage, perhaps near the water, but certainly well out of town, and furnished. Of course I do. My conscious imagination can't, imagine any other option. The realtor sends me to rental after rental after rental. But like Goldilocks exploring the Three Bears house, nothing feels just right. Maybe I'm wrong about Penetang, even though I felt powerfully guided and intuitively directed to be here. I'm about to give up when the realtor, flipping through her listings, announces that she has one more, a granny flat on Champlain Road. It's not quite out of town, she says, but it's not right in town either. This can't be it, I moan 10 minutes later, as Roxy and I pull into the driveway of a 2-story white clapboard house fronted by a single-level flat that looks as though it was once a country grocery store. The house sits a few hundred yards back from Champlain Road, not a country lane, but a major thoroughfare where cars buzz by at a non-bucolic 90 kilometers an hour. That's 55 miles an hour. Worse, as I discover a few minutes later, it isn't furnished. When I left Toronto for Nova Scotia 2 years ago, I got rid of pretty much everything I owned, including all my furniture. Ever since, I've been either making do with borrowed furniture or by living in furnished places. We'll find furniture for you, Angela Emery assures me as she shows me the 1-bedroom apartment. She crouches down to scratch Roxy's belly. Roxy will love the woods behind the house, she continues, and Jeremy will love Roxy. Jeremy? Who's Jeremy? I ask silently. As it turns out, Jeremy is Angela and Jim Emery's 9-year-old son, their only child. And he's not even remotely a selling point. I never got along with 9-year-olds when I was one. Why would I get along with one now that I'm a few weeks shy of 42? Even as I repeat my silent, "This can't be it," I know that it is. I know it intuitively, in the same way I know Penetang is where I need to be. It's the same intuitive knowingness that got me to Nova Scotia and back to Toronto. And it's the same intuitive knowingness that is at the heart of everything I teach about writing and creativity, and as a spiritual teacher. I also know that it's pointless to turn it down and drive away. I tried that with one of my Nova Scotia rentals, and that house chased after me until I finally gave in. Seriously. So let's turn the clock back a few years to that story. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, and as I share in detail in Stories and Reflections 15, I got rid of pretty much everything I owned when I moved to rural Nova Scotia in late 1994. Not surprisingly, the first place I rented was furnished. But about 2 months into that 3-month rental, the voice of my intuition declared that it was time for me to move on, to someplace unfurnished. Unfurnished? How was that supposed to work? I had no furniture and I had no income. I was living off savings. "Don't worry," the voice of my intuition replied, in a refrain that would repeat unaltered over the years. I did worry, but I began house hunting anyhow. The first place I called about turned out to be an electrically heated 3-bedroom, 2-story cottage about 25 miles away. Given the time of year, winter, and Nova Scotia power rates, then the second highest in Canada, I was certain that this couldn't be the place. "The house has a Kemax stove," the owner offered, trying to reassure me. Not knowing what a Kemax stove was, I wasn't reassured. Instead, I tossed the owner's information and kept looking. 2 days later, my phone rang. "It's John in Tuscott, from the house in Amiros Hill. We spoke the other day. When do you want to come out to see the house?" I had never given John my phone number, only my name and town. He had found me in the phone book. Remember phone books? Reluctantly, I made an appointment to go see it. Once I got there, nothing about the house appealed to me. It wasn't quaint, its surroundings weren't picturesque, and it was inland. The nearest water was a not particularly scenic tidal marsh, a short walk away. Despite all of that, I knew it was the right house. I didn't know why it was the right house. I even hated that it was the right house. I knew only that it was. I signed a 3-month lease. The only good news turned out to be the Kemax stove, which I discovered was a wood and oil-burning cook stove that dominated the spacious kitchen and heated the only parts of the house I ultimately used, the kitchen and the living room, which I converted into an all-purpose space. I closed off the rest of the house. As for furniture and kitchen basics, everything I needed miraculously showed up as soon as I surrendered to the move, thanks to my handful of area friends who eagerly unloaded their excess household goods on me, on the understanding that I would never return them. All these years later, I still can't tell you why it was a perfect house, other than maybe because it was where I completed a first draft of the Moon Quest, and did it in some weird synchronistic way on the first anniversary of the writing workshop in which I started it. That's a story I tell in Stories and Reflections 14. Anyhow, after my Nova Scotia experience, I know it's pointless to walk away from the house on Champlain Road. I sigh. "I'll take it," I say. Roxy and I move in about 6 weeks later on my 42nd birthday. The leaves, which have barely begun to turn in Toronto, are already golden this far north. And the air, although still warm, carries a chill promise of what will prove to be my harshest winter since growing up in Montreal. I can't know this yet, can't even begin to imagine it, but this will also prove to be my final winter in Canada, my final birthday in this country too. True to her word, Angela has furnished the flat, with a queen mattress and a mismatched assortment of odds and ends. I've barely unpacked when Jeremy knocks on my door. Bright, energetic, and mature for his 9 years, he insists on taking me and Roxy on an immediate tour of the dense woodland that rises up to a forested ridge behind the house, enthusiastically pointing out all his favorite landmarks. His mother was right. These woods are amazing, magical, and I love them as much as Roxy does. Over the next 4 months or so, Roxy and I will walk them pretty much every day, multiple times some days, even when it involves trudging through deep snow. The next afternoon, Jeremy again knocks on my front door. He also comes by the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Just about every day, in fact. After school on weekends, mornings on weekends and holidays. During his visits, he wrestles with Roxy, plays games on my new computer, or just hangs out. And come Christmas, he convinces his dad to buy me a small tree, my first, when they're shopping for theirs. He then scavenges ornaments from Angela and stays to help me decorate. I tried to resist Jeremy. What do I know about kids? What do I know about entertaining kids? I'm the youngest in my immediate family and among the youngest in my extended family. I've never even babysat, and I've never had any interest in having kids of my own. I just want to be left alone. But Jeremy is relentless. He insinuates his way into my life. He insinuates his way into my heart. And when 5 months later it comes time for me and Roxy to leave, to return to Toronto, he's by far my most difficult goodbye. My time in Penetang wasn't easy. It was a period of intense transformation, a period I write about in my Dialogues with the Divine memoir. Yet as tough as those 5 months were, they would have been a whole hell of a lot tougher without Jeremy, and Roxy, of course. Every day, Jeremy reminded me to lighten up. Every day he made me laugh. And every day he showed me just how joyful life can be. Through all that, because of that, Jeremy also helped me heal the emotional gap left by my largely absent father, who died when I was 13 and wasn't much present either physically or emotionally in the years before that. Jeremy may even have helped precipitate the reconciliation I had with him with my father, or with his spirit, in August 1997. I shared that story in Stories and Reflections 7. Yet as amazing as all those gifts were, perhaps the biggest and most valuable was that my time with Jeremy prepared me to become the father I didn't yet know, couldn't yet know, I'd become less than 2 years later. My logical, conscious mind could never have imagined all of that, could never have predicted it, could never have prayed for it or in some way called it in, because my logical, conscious mind could never have seen it. And because it couldn't, my logical, conscious mind wanted to walk away from the house on Champlain Road when it didn't fit any of my assumptions. But my intuitive mind did imagine. My higher mind did see. My wisest self did know. And that inner knowingness proved to be more insightful and well, smarter than my logical mind. When I talk in my writing classes about our stories being smarter than we are, what I'm really saying is that our intuitive minds, our higher minds, our infinite minds are smarter than our conscious logical minds, as powerful as they are. Yet as powerful as they are, they're finite. They're the visible tip of an iceberg whose greater mass, much greater mass, sits beneath the waterline of our conscious awareness. Here's what I say about intuition in my book, The Way of the Imperfect Fool. Intuition is your inner compass, your sixth sense, that non-physical source of intelligence that not only transcends taste, touch, sound, sight, and smell, but is often more powerful and telling than those 5 physical senses combined. Intuition is the language of the unconscious, the voice of the heart, the song of the soul. It's an expression of your highest wisdom. It's your GPS on the way of the fool. So think of all the times you've had a hunch or a gut feeling that, contrary to all common sense, proves to be accurate. Think of all the times you've viewed something as either a good sign or a bad omen and been right. There are many ways to foster and develop intuition. The best, of course, is to trust it and to act on it whenever you sense an action to take, a decision to make, or direction to go in. The more you listen for your heart, the more you will hear it. And the more you heed it, the more intuitive guidance you'll access. Our intuition often speaks to us in metaphor. in signs and symbols, through dreams and visions, and in those meaningful coincidences that Carl Jung termed synchronicities. It can also speak through physical sensations, goosebumps, a truth shiver, a fluttering in the stomach, or through a hunch, an inner knowing, or a gut feeling. Once again, the more aware we allow ourselves to be of these messages, and the more attention we pay to them, the more of them we will notice. In effect, we're training ourselves to bypass the logical, conventional, sensible, status quo cues that our minds prefer in favor of the unexpected, the unconventional, the unexplainable, what I like to call the unsensical. Any activity that stops you from intellectualizing, analyzing, or overthinking, that refocuses your attention from head to heart, or that pulls your awareness back into the present moment, opens a door into your intuition. Here are a few suggestions to help you access that, and I have even more in the way of The Imperfect Fool, specifically out of the book Step Number 2. Each of my Way of the Fool books has 12 and a half steps, and step number 2 is fire up your intuition. First, any kind of centering activity, meditation or guided visualization, for example, or an activity that combines physical activity with mindfulness, like yoga, tai chi, or qigong, or even a walk or hike in nature, like the kind Roxy and I did most mornings in the woods behind the house on Champlain Road. Here's another, writing on the muse stream. That's a technique I teach in all my writing courses and workshops, and in all my books for writers. Whether you're using it on a creative project or for journaling, it's a powerfully effective way to get out of your head and explore your innate intuitive gifts. And here's another, any kind of passionate pursuit. It's easy to enter into a Zen state of peace, presence, and receptivity when we immerse ourselves in an activity we're passionate about. Also, watch for signs, symbols, and synchronicities, and pay attention to your dreams. The more you acknowledge the possibility of deeper meaning in your life, the more that potential will make itself known, and the more clearly it will tend to express itself. And finally, pay attention to your body. Your body has an innate wisdom, and your intuition often expresses itself through it, sometimes painfully obviously, sometimes more subtly. Again, I go into more detail about these and offer even more suggestions in The Way of the Imperfect Fool. For now, though, to help you train yourself to not only listen to your intuition but trust it, here's the affirmation-style declaration that concludes The Way of the Imperfect Fool step number 2, fire up your intuition. I'll say it slowly, phrase by phrase, so you can repeat it after me. But if you're watching on video, you'll see the words up on the screen. I, insert your name, so I, your full name, choose to take notice of the signs, symbols, and synchronicities that express my intuition at work in my life. I follow my inner compass and trust my sixth sense. And so it is. Again, I, your full name, choose to take notice of the signs, symbols, and synchronicities that express my intuition at work in my life. I follow my inner compass and trust my sixth sense. And so it is. Now, before you argue that intuition may be cool but has no application out in the real world, here's a story from the real world where it did, to the tune of $12 million. This story goes back to the mid-1980s, when LA's Getty Museum paid a Swiss art dealer what's rumored to have been as much as $12 million for a priceless Greek statue known as a kouros. Now, of course, the museum didn't just hand over $12 million without doing due diligence. In fact, it spent 14 months subjecting the statue's provenance documents to close scrutiny, and the statue itself to a battery of scientific tests. Even so, upon viewing the statue at the Getty, some historians were absolutely certain it was a fake. As Malcolm Gladwell tells the story in his book Blink, one historian insisted that it just didn't look right, while another had an instinctive sense that something about it was off. As it turned out, those intuitive hunches proved to be accurate. By the early 1990s, it was discovered that not only had the Kouros' documentation been forged, but the layer of calcite around the statue could easily have been formed in just a few years, not over many centuries, as had originally been assumed. What happened to the Kouros? Well, it's still at the Getty, but it's in storage and viewable only by private appointment. So fire up your intuition and trust it. It might not save you $12 million, but it will carry you to wondrous worlds beyond your conscious imagining. Thanks for joining me for Stories and Reflections today. I hope you found moments in my stories that touched something in yours. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And for more of my stories and help telling yours, check out my books at markdavidgerson.com or from online booksellers worldwide. Until next time, don't forget that you're a storyteller too, and keep telling your stories. The intro and outro music for today's episode is Heartwarming by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons.